We probably have the biggest meta change in a while. We have like the meta pretty much flipped on its shoulders. We have some SNAs become BNCs, and then we have some BNCs becoming S tier comps. So at the top in the S tier, we have Sentinels, Assassins, and Kayle Knights. I know some of these are going to come as a surprise, but we will get into how to play each and every one of these compositions in just a bit. A tier, we have Aphelios and Invokers as per usual, and then B tier, Abominations dropped, Vel'Koz dropped a little bit, Reroll Legionnaire, that's a new build that I'm going to go over. Forgotten Draven, Nightbringer Yasuo, Dawnbringer Karma, and then Riven rounds out the B tier. And then in the C tier, we have Skirmishers, Cavalier Cannoneer, and Hellion. So one quick note, just because they're C tier doesn't mean they are unplayable. It just means that a lot of the good players are not playing them that often right now. So I know there are a lot of surprises. I know you guys are curious what's with the Kayle Knights, what's with the Assassins. If you guys want to access the page I am on, head on over to bunnymuffins.lol/meta. Let's get right into the compositions. So starting off in the S tier, let's go over Sentinels. This build has gotten a big buff because of the recent changes to the Sentinel trait, where you get the Sentinel buff on the dude with the most items. So who's that going to be? Lucian. Who do you want the buff on? Lucian. You could go 3 or 6 Sentinels. I'm liking 6 Sentinels a lot more right now because, again, since you're guaranteeing the buff onto your Lucian, you want to get as much of a buff on him as possible. Items are relatively the same, but if you guys are frequent viewers of the channel or frequent users of the website, you guys already know how to play this. If you guys are new, go ahead and subscribe below as I update this tier list every single Friday. But essentially what you want to do is do a standard leveling pattern, get a lot of attack damage items onto Lucian. These are very contested items right now because sword and bow are used in so many of the strong compositions. And I had listed out the core units here. I have these listed out for most of the builds, so you want to build the core and then add in the random units that are left over from the comp to fill in different synergies, or just using what you hit and playing flexibly. On to the next build. Assassins finally made a jump up. Nocturne got a couple changes. His 1 and 2 star got a little stronger and his 3 star got a little weaker, but this means you are able to get to the final comp a lot easier. Obviously, you prefer to go 6 Assassin if you get the Assassin Spatula. If you do that, throw in a Kha'Zix and then put the Spatula onto Fiddlesticks. But with this comp, you want to focus on Nocturne items. He likes attack speed, he likes attack damage, he likes critical strike. So just slow roll at level 7 for Nocturne 3 and you are going to be set from there. Zeke's Herald, great on Fiddlesticks or Ivern to buff your Nocturne. And I linked a guy here who's been playing him a lot, especially in Korea. Oh yeah, just a note guys, Assassins and the next comp we're going to go over, Kayle. Very popular in Korea, not so much in NA quite yet, but I think these are going to pick up in a moment there. So now onto Kayle Knights. Someone finally found the item combination of what works on Kayle, and that is going to be Rageblade plus Deathblade. After that, I like having a GA on her to give her that much more survivability because it buys so much time in a team fight. And that essentially allows her to ramp up a lot faster. But the essentials right now, Rageblade, Deathblade, it is like the go-to combo for every Kayle player in existence who is good right now. After that, you want to go 4 Knights. You don't have to do 4 Knights. A lot of people just put in random strong units, but I like 4 Knights the most because it's the most straightforward to follow, and the units are cheaper. But if you want to go ahead and do like just a strong unit comp, you could go ahead and add in like legendary tanks instead of Nautilus and Thresh, and just run the stronger units. Just keep in mind you can't do that every single game. But yeah, this comp is the same as usual. You still are reliant on hitting Kayle, but 1-star Kayle is often enough with these items to do really well in a lot of your games. So let me know how this comp goes for you guys, because this is like one of the first times this set that Kayle is actually pretty good. So now onto the A tiers. That was all the S tiers. We have Aphelios. He's been like perma A tier. 1, because actions in the game, he's a new legendary and he's a ranger. And 2, a lot of his complementary units have always been pretty decent. But here I switched out the Bloodthirster for the Spear of Shojin and then used the Rageblade and the Deathblade combo. Of course, if you use Rageblade and Deathblade, you could go ahead and swap into the Kayle comp we talked about before if you built that in the early game. So you have a lot of different directions you could go in with these items. Spear of Shojin going to be great on him because he just gets out a lot more hits with the Spear of Shojin. I think this is like one of the better times to build it on him right now. But to play this comp, you want to do a standard leveling, which is, if you guys didn't know, you guys can check out the leveling guide at the top of my website. I think it's under cheat sheets, but there's also a link over here and in the description below. But going back to the Aphelios build, that's pretty much all there is to it. You want to go for 4 cost carries, and that's what standard leveling does. So you just want to try to get there as efficiently and smoothly as possible. Of course, with most compositions, you want to play a strong early game and just play best board and try to survive and just essentially play TFT until you get your desired carry. Now onto Invokers. Invokers, this is like the best late game comp. It's still really, really good. When I analyze a lot of the top 10 players, a lot of them default to this board if they go anything similar to an ability power composition, and if they have time to go for it in their games, such as games where they have a ton of gold and a lot of health, because it's just one of the strongest late game boards that's like pretty easy to hit. But yeah, with this comp, you're pretty much going for Karma or Vel'Koz in the early game, and then if you are in a game where you can go for a bunch of legendaries, you go ahead and go for this composition. Now onto the B tier. We have a lot of B tiers this time because I feel like the A and S tiers, there's a stark difference in how often players are going for the A and S tier comps compared to everything else, and that's why the B tier is so big right now. So Abominations finally got dethroned after a pretty sizable nerf, but they're still decent. If you get a good start for them, like Abominations are still really tanky, you just need more damage to back them up. The Abomination isn't gonna solo carry the entire game. Vel'Koz and Heimerdinger are still the default carries for that, and again, you want to do like some sort of A-bomb draconic start for this type of build. Next up, we have Redeemed Vel'Koz. Vel'Koz got a slight nerf to his mana. That's why he kind of fell down a little bit. He was already like not that great before. He was kind of like only good because he wasn't played. But once he started picking up in popularity because of Abominations, it was mainly the Abominations that were strong, not necessarily Vel'Koz. So when they nerf Vel'Koz, his Redeem build is going to take a hit, unfortunately. But it's still B tier. It's still playable if you get it. If you have the AP items, like what other choice do you have? You can't go any of the Aphelios comps. You can't go the Kayle comp. You can't go the Assassin comp. So you have to go for like the Vel'Koz comp instead. And to do that, he's a 4-cost, so we're going to do standard leveling. And then after that, Reroll Legionnaire. I am very excited about this build because this is the first new build in a while, and there are a ton of different combinations you could do with this. On the board you see right now, we have 6 Redeemed and 4 Knights with a Knight Spatula, but you may notice we also have 3 Legionnaires. So if you get a Legionnaire Spatula, go ahead and go for 4 Legionnaires. So if I scroll down a little bit, you will see that we want to slow roll at level 5 for Aatrox and Kalista 3-star. Some people pick up the Leona as well because she is part of the build and a 1-cost. But here's what I want you guys to do. There are a few options. You could either go 6 Redeemed, 4 Knights, or 4 Legionnaire. You essentially have to pick one of these, and then if you get a spatula, you could pick 2 of these, and then if you get 2 spatulas, you could pick all 3 of them. So it really depends on how many spatulas you get per game and what units drop for you, which are convenient to use for your team. But pretty much the core is just Kalista, Aatrox, and Leona. Items on Kalista is going to be all the attack damage, attack speed items. I like Runons a lot on her whenever I run a Deathblade. And then Aatrox, he likes tank items. You could put some goofy AP items on him as well. That works pretty good too. Titan's Resolve is another good item, but I tend to use my bows on Kalista instead, so that's why I list out the defensive components on the Aatrox and then the other stuff on the Kalista. So now onto Forgotten Draven. Draven got a bit of a bump, and he has a lot of different builds you can do. 6 Forgotten, 4 Forgotten, even like a 2 Forgotten works with him. Essentially, just playing Draven with strong units is going to take you pretty far if you are good at the composition, but you guys are going to do a standard leveling again because he's a 4-cost unit, and just mix and match. He's a little difficult to play right now. I should change the difficulty to high, so just keep that in mind as you play him because you will need to flex out a lot of different spots because if you look at the synergies, Forgotten has 2-4-6, Cavalier has 2-3-4, Ironclad 2-3-4, Knights 2-4-6, Legionnaire 2-4-6. Pretty much every synergy that is used in this composition has a lot of small thresholds. So there's no like one comp you want to go for when you go for a Draven build, and it really just depends on the game what you are going to go. So I would avoid this comp if you aren't going to play it pretty often. But if you want to play an easy comp and don't want to play Draven, go ahead and wait for the next comp, which is Nightbringer Yasuo. This is just a reroll comp. So you go to level 7, roll for 3-star Yasuo or slow roll for 3-star Yasuo. Itemize him up with what you see on the screen here, and yeah, you're pretty much good to go. That's all you gotta do there. One thing to keep in mind, they nerfed a lot of the 3-stars in the recent patch, so he's bumped down quite a bit. He was B tier last patch, but I feel like he's not weak enough to push down to the C tier quite yet. Next build, we have Dawnbringer Karma. This comp was in the dumpster for a while, but I think since everything else got nerfed, she got a little better because now her ability power items are not as contested as before. Before, people were going for Abominations with Vel'Koz all the time, or Zyra, or Heimerdinger. It's not happening as often, so it's easier to get the Karma items because everyone and their mom are going for Deathblade, Rageblade, and Infinity Edge, those types of items. And that means all the Karma items are pretty much free game for you. So you could just go ahead and get them. If you get the Karma, great, and then just play the comp and do decently with her. She got a slight buff, but it's not quite enough to push her into like the A or S tier, or even like the high B tier. She's like, I'd say low B tier right now. Riven Carry, this is another reroll comp that got nerfed. Same story with the Yasuo. If you get it, great. If not, like, I wouldn't force this build every game. But the items on her, Rapid Fire Cannon and Runon's most important thing, you could kind of flex between the Riven and the Yasuo carry, depending on which copies of the units you get more of, because they use a lot of the same items. After that, we are going to go to the C tier. Again, just because they're in C tier doesn't mean they are unplayable. I actually think these comps are decently good, but a lot of the top players are not playing them right now, just as a disclaimer, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't ever play them at all. It just means that you probably shouldn't play them that often, or like every single game. So Skirmisher Knights, this is the same build as before. I didn't make any changes here, but some people like RFC on the Jax. You just play 4 Knights plus 3 Skirms, and the reason why people play this is because no one goes Jax, and then you add in a bunch of Ironclads. Ironclads are good against all the attack damage comps that you're going to face, and if you're going for like an Aphelios and you don't get him, but you get Jax, you might as well go for it. Next build, we have Cavalier Cannoneers. This comp got nerfed, so yeah, just don't play this comp. This is probably like one of the weaker C tier comps. And then Hellion Reroll, this comp also got nerfed a bunch in the B patch last time, but no one really plays Tristana anymore. And Kennen got nerfed slightly, I think, in the last patch as well. So it's just too much happening for a comp that was a reroll comp and kind of inconsistent to begin with. Was it too strong before? Probably. But maybe they touched it a little too much. Before we get on to the items, if you guys enjoyed this so far, go ahead and smack the like. The best items right now, it's a tie, I think, between Belt and Sword. Sword, obviously, you want all the Deathblade stuff, but Belt is just so good in the early game. Sunfire Cape is still really, really good. Warmog's still one of the best tank items right now, so like I have a hard time deciding. So if you are only going for attack damage comps, obviously go for the Sword, because Deathblade, 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 it's in like every one of my builds. Belt, again, if you want to play flexibly, go for the Belt. And yeah, pretty much, again, everything is playable except for the Negatron. So just avoid Negatron for now. Let's go ahead and sum up the patch. Again, like, Kayle, play it while you can, because I feel like in the next couple of days, a lot of people are going to be playing Kayle, in which case it's going to be impossible to go for this comp. What we need to start thinking about is maybe how to counter all the Kayles that are going to come in the future. I think Assassins do really well against Kayle, but unfortunately Assassins are also really good, so people are going to be playing them a lot as well. And you can't really have more than like 1 or 2 Assassin players, because there are only so many copies of Nocturnes, and it's going to be really hard to get them to 3-star if someone is contesting you. Sentinels might just be the default, like, play one comp this patch. So if you guys are one of those people who like only likes playing one comp, it's probably going to be Sentinels. You could also do Aphelios, but if you are flexing, or if you're a flexible player, do a mix of the SABs as per usual. And if you're a hipster, play the C comps. But yeah, that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully I get my computer and internet set up within the next couple weeks so I can start going back into my normal YouTube schedule. I'll let you guys know. My internet's pretty bad at my place. Like, dude, it takes me like an hour to upload a small YouTube video. But hopefully that gets fixed soon. I'm trying to upgrade my internet. Unfortunately, like, the upload speed in my area, like, I checked everything, that's just all really, really bad. So I don't really know if there's a solution to that, because installing fiber optics in this house takes like a year to do, because the cable companies don't like just come tomorrow to set it up. But yeah, hopefully next week my internet is going to be fast enough to actually like upload a lot of games, or even like start streaming again. But we shall see. But thanks so much for sticking around. I'm glad you guys all enjoy the meta snapshot, and I will see you all next time.